is working, so we'll get underway. So thanks for joining today. My name is Josh Osborne. I'm the product manager for the CI tools here at Central Innovation in Auckland. And today's session is the CI tools Q&A session that we've been doing for the last couple of months. And essentially what this session is each week is to go through a couple of frequently asked questions about the CI tools to cover off areas that people sort of seem to want to know about and that sort of thing. This week we are going to largely be looking at a sort of an introduction to the Keynotes tool because we've had quite a few queries about what Keynotes is and how it works and that sort of thing recently. So we're going to do a sort of a Keynotes for people who haven't seen Keynotes before. That'll take us about 20 minutes or so, and then we'll have time for some questions at the end. So if you have any questions at all about the Keynotes tool or about anything else to do with the CI tools, you can enter those at any point now, and when I get to the end of the main Keynotes presentation, I'll go through and answer what questions of those I can do on air, and anything that I can't, I'll follow up with you afterwards. So if you do have any questions, enter those, and if you do have any topics that you would like us to cover in future versions of this webinar, please let me know about that as well, because yeah, we're starting to run out of things that people want to see covered in these. So it'd be great if you have any sort of common things that you want to know how to do, or workflows that you'd like to see the way that we do them, or anything like that. That'd be great to know just what you guys are interested in finding out about. But yes, today we're going to be looking at the Keynotes tool. If you don't already have the Keynotes tool, you can get a trial version of that, so you could try it out after you've watched this for 30 days. You can just install that by using the CI Tools installer and going to the Trials tab there. That'll let you install a trial and have a go and see if it does what you want it to. Today I'm going to be working in ArchiCAD 24, but the Keynotes tool, the interface for it looks pretty much exactly the same in 23 and also 22. And if you're using ArchiCAD 21 or older, it looks quite similar. So I'm fairly sure that seeing the concepts that I'm going to show here will give you a good idea of how it actually works in those versions as well. It just may not look exactly the same when you use it there. But in 23 and 24 and 22, it will look pretty much exactly like what we're seeing here. There have been a handful of new features that have been added between those versions, but 23 and 24 will look exactly like what I'm working with here. So before I start, just quickly, what is the Keynotes tool? You've probably got a tip-off based on the name, but essentially it is for using Keynotes, for making Keynotes, for managing Keynotes, and for displaying and documenting Keynotes. And so the idea here is to have all of your notes centralized in your ArchiCAD project. So in a lot of cases, probably most ArchiCAD users will be using Keynotes in some way, not the Keynotes tool that is, but using Keynotes themselves. And so there's a lot of ways that people do that. I've come across people who have a Word document that they have everything in and they copy and paste out of it. Others use Excel to do roughly the same thing. There are several online providers of notes and that sort of thing, or you could use just files that are saved online like Google Docs or something like that. People use a variety of different ways of managing their Keynotes. And so what the Keynotes tool aims to be is a way to get your data out of whatever that thing is that you're using currently and build it into the ArchiCAD project, and then let you selectively add the notes that you want to your project. So it streamlines that process of getting the data out from where it is living and into your ArchiCAD project. And then also when it comes to scheduling and management of your notes, it also helps with that as well. Scheduling, obviously, because it knows that you've placed notes, it can easily create schedules that show you just the notes that you're using, and management in the sense that if you make changes to any of your notes, you know that all other placed instances of that note will also be updated, so you don't have to worry about going through and recopy and pasting data when you make changes and that sort of thing. So the idea for Keynotes is to just give you peace of mind about the integrity throughout your project of any notes that you work with. to give you a quick and easy way of creating that schedule, and also to give you everything inside ArchiCAD so you don't have to flip from ArchiCAD to some other program. So the main way that we're going to interact with the Keynotes tool is by using the Keynotes palette. So if you go to your CI Tools menu and go down to Keynotes here, you'll see the top option there, Keynotes palette, will let you open that out. And we're going to leave that, it is a palette rather than a dialog box, so we can keep it open while we do stuff in ArchiCAD. And the first thing that we're going to want to do with this is to actually get some keynotes into our file. So you can see at the moment it's pretty sparse looking there. We don't have any notes in here. So the first thing we'll do is we'll import our notes. Now I'm just going to import, sorry, I didn't show you what that button was, using this button here to bring up the Keynotes Manager, or you can also go to CI Tools, Keynotes, and hit the Keynotes Manager from here. They both do the same thing. And this will let us import our notes. Now I'm going to import the default note set that we actually install with our tools. So I'll choose the import button and I will go and find my ArchiCAD folder. Oops. And go to CI Tools Extras, and that's where our default notes database is installed to. So I'm going to select that and hit open. And once I do, it's going to pop up a little preview of what notes will be imported when I do this. So you can see on the left, these are the notes in the file I'm importing, and on the right is the notes that already exist in the project, which there aren't any of. So I'm going to hit import all and click OK. Once I do that, you'll see the Notes Manager now has all those notes in it, and now I can click OK again, and those notes are all added to my project now. So you can see the project name at the very top here, and then project keynotes, and all of the notes we just imported are there. So that's kind of the first step. And the notes database that we have pre-installed, which is the one I've just used, is sort of intended to be an example of what a keynotes file might look like. It has some relatively sensible things set up in it, but it's not been made up to any specific standard or specification system or anything like that. It's just a sort of a generic looking set of notes. So it would be a good place to start if you don't have anything already, but if you do have something already, then I would recommend using that. And so the process for that is the same, except that when you go to import, you'll want to change the files of type to a CSV or text file, depending on what your application that you use will let you export to. And then you can import that. And when you choose to import that file, you'll get this intermediate message here, which lets you choose which fields match to which things. So it's a fairly standard thing in importing data from an application outside of what you're using. You just need to tell it what your the columns in your file that you're importing from mean in terms of actual keynotes here. So you can go through and match those up using this here and hit OK, and it'll import them in the same way as what I did before. So that gets us our starting database, and this is built into the ArchiCAD project now. So as soon as I save this project, it now lives in this ArchiCAD file. Now the way that Keynotes works is via the use of the label tool. So I'm going to select one of these notes that I want to place down. And when I select it, you can see the details of the note that I have selected. And if I double click on it, it's going to get the label tool ready. You can see it's auto-selected the label tool here, and it's going to put that keynote that I selected, sort of preload it into this label. So now if I come to my model and I click to place, it's going to unfortunately place the wrong thing because I had associative note turned on. Excuse me. Click there. You'll see that my keynote label is placed. So we've got 30204, 15 series, reinforced, etc. And you can see that that's what it showed there. And you can go through this way and add labels to anything that you want to. Obviously, that the trick there was that you need to make sure not to use the associative notes when you place them, because those are going to try and associate themselves to the element that you click on, and they'll bring in something like the ID by default and that sort of thing, which is not what we want in this case. We just want to place a note with our keynotes. We do have something similar to the associative notes called attribute keynotes, which I'll show at the end if we have time. But for now, we're just going to be placing these type of labels. So you can go through your project and add these labels to whatever you want to add keynotes to in the project. Obviously, they don't have to associate to a certain element. You can draw them anywhere that you want. And you can also add multiple notes to labels as well. So if I select one of these placed labels and go through and double click on a note, instead of selecting the label tool and letting me place a new one, it adds that label, that note to this label that we already have placed and selected. So you can go through and on a single element, you can have a single label that has multiple notes in it. And while we're working through here, any notes that you select will, in the bottom of our palette here, show you what is contained in the label currently. So this section here shows us the settings of the note, and this part here shows us the settings of the label itself that we have selected. So you can see that changes as I go through. And you can manipulate this list as well if you need to. So if I add a few more things to this label here, you can see the label contents has gotten quite large now. There's a couple of things you can do here. You can select notes inside the label, and you can remove them by using this delete option here, or you can hide them by pressing this little eyeball option. And what that does is that the note is still part of this label, but it's not currently being shown, which at the moment is not particularly useful because all this is a label. But later on, again, when we look at the attribute keynotes, that's something that will come in useful probably. We'll just turn that back on for now. And then the last setting here is the option to change the ordering. At the moment, it's set to A to Z method, so it's just sorting it automatically. But if we turn that off, you can click and drag your notes around to change the order of those. So you can make them show in whatever order you want them to. So that's how you place your labels in ArchiCAD. Obviously, I'm working in the floor plan at the moment, but this will also work in sections and elevations as well. So you can go through and annotate whatever you need to as you go. And then the next part of the tool is the scheduling. So one of the things that you'll want to be doing is showing what a sort of a legend of the full details of your notes on your layout sheets. So I'm just going to open up this. I think this is the layout that will contain the notes we just drew. Yes, so you can see we've got some notes here. And to create a schedule, what I'm going to do is go to CI Tools, Keynotes, and choose the Create Schedule option. And when I do that, it's going to present me with a couple of settings. The default settings should do something sensible, so you can just do that. I'll just quickly show you what is possible though. So obviously, we only want to add them to the current layout at the moment, but you can choose to add a schedule to every single layout in your drawing if you want. Obviously, that's going to take a little bit of time for it to work its way through, but that will just nice and quickly do that if that's what you want. And then you can choose what to include in the schedule. So you can have your schedule show every keynote that's in your database. You can have it show every keynote that is used anywhere in the project, any keynote that is visible on any layout at all, any keynote that shows on this layout, or only notes that you select manually. So this setting here is the default setting, and it's what I would recommend in almost all cases, unless you're doing a sort of a master notes list, in which case you would use this option here. So only keynotes visible in the layout, and then we're going to just use the default settings for how the schedule will look. So I'll hit OK. And you'll see that it has generated a schedule up on the top left. That's the default location for the schedule. And it's placed down all of the notes with full detail of the 3 or 4 labels that I placed in the floor plan view. And if I then go back to the floor plan view and make any changes or add any new notes here, that one was already placed, so that's not much use. 30403 and 30501. If I go back to my my layout here, and has the drawing updated? Yes, the drawing's updated. Now I just need to go to CI Tools, Keynotes, and choose Update Schedules. And I would want to just update the current layout. Hit OK, and after a second of checking, it will update that schedule to include those new notes. So this is the part that I meant earlier where you just don't have to worry about making sure that you've done that part because it does it for you. So long as you make sure that you update your schedules before you output your drawings, you can safely know that your schedule does definitely contain everything that you have placed down. So that's the Keynote labels and the Keynote scheduling. The next thing that I want to look at is how you actually maintain your notes inside ArchiCAD, your notes database, that is. So probably something that you'll do quite often when you're using Keynotes is that you'll want to make changes to the notes that you have, and you want to make sure that that change gets applied to everything as it should do. So let's say, for example, we want to choose the 30403 stair treads. We want to change the text of that. So I'll go through here and find 30403 stair treads, and I'm going to change that to, say, just something different. So we've made a change to the way that that note looks. So you can see in the listing up here, it's changed to reflect what we just did, but the label hasn't changed at all. And the reason for that is because sometimes you may not always want to do that. We want to let you have the control over when things will change in your project. We don't want it to automatically go and change anytime you accidentally do anything or even on purpose do something to take control away. And so what we need to do now is we need to run the audit tool. And what the audit tool does is it does, again, pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It will go through all of your placed labels and make sure that they still match up with what's in your notes database. So you can get to the audit tool just by clicking this button here, and it will bring on this audit labels dialog. And this is going to show us anything that it has found that we need to do something about. So generally the workflow when you are finished with doing something and you want to export documentation is that once you're happy that all of your place labels have the things that you want them into, you would run an audit to make sure everything is consistent through the project, then update all of your schedules, and then you're ready to go. So the audit step would be in between drawing your labels and producing or updating your schedule. So you can see at the moment it's showing mostly black text, which just means we don't have to do anything about these. So it's showing us each individual label here. They're all placed on floor plan 1 ground floor, but if they were in other views, you would see that reflected there. And you can see this orange one here is telling us we need to do something there. So we've got a changed note there. So if I select that and I press the zoom to button, it's going to select the label that it is interested in and zoom into it so that we can see it easily. And it's telling us that this has changed. So what it means by that is that the note itself has changed, but the label hasn't caught up with that yet. And so what you can do is just hit the repair button and it will instantly update the label to reflect the change that we made to that note. And obviously this will apply to any placed instances of that note. So if you have a note that's placed in more than one place, so line of slab, for instance, is placed on 2 of these labels. Let's go and find 30306. Just make a quick change to that. We'll refresh our auditor and you can see that it has now found 2 changes. And I can hit repair and it will automatically update both of those labels. And you may notice that because I didn't have either of them selected there, it repaired them both at the same time. If I had just one selected when I hit repair, it would repair just the one that I had selected. So if you just want to go through, you don't want to go through and eyeball each individual change, you can just run the auditor and hit the repair button without even selecting or zooming to anything, and it will just go through and fix everything for you. And the audit tool works for other things as well besides just changes. So if you, for instance, were to go through and let's get 30501 and we'll just delete that note entirely. So this is gone from our database completely now. Run the auditor now, we'll get some pink text on this one, and that's saying that we have a label that is orphaned. So if I zoom to that one, it'll find this GRC wall cap label, and when it says orphaned, what it means is essentially that this note, this label no longer has a parent, which is to say that the note that created it, the note that it's linked to, doesn't exist anymore. And so if I run a repair now, the way that it fixes that is by removing it. I'm not going to do that just yet because I want to show you the replace option. But yes, if I hit repair, it's just going to remove that orphaned note for now. And so generally, if you do have orphaned notes, you probably don't want them disappearing completely. You may do, in which case just hitting repair is fine. But if you don't, you're going to want to go through and tell it what you want them to use instead. So in this case, 30501, I don't want that to be that anymore. I can see it's orphaned, so its actual note isn't there anymore. So I'm going to replace it, and I'm going to go and choose a different note. So I'll choose this one here, hit OK. And you can see that the label has automatically updated to be the new note, 00301 instead. And so that way you can go through any notes that you have orphaned and fix those up by matching them to notes that they should be using instead. So this is very handy if when you make changes to your notes database, to go through and help you match up through that method. And then if you also have changed notes in here as well, you can always run repair after you've done all your replacements to fix those up as well. So that's placing your labels, that's auditing, and that's scheduling. Just before I move on to a couple of questions, I very quickly want to show you the attribute notes as well. And the way that these work are that rather than placing a sort of a static label containing your notes, what this does is it builds notes into the actual attributes in your project. So to show you how that works, I'm just going to grab one of these walls and I'll just quickly look at what it is using so that we can see what we're going to do. Let's just make that a timber wall. So I go to the Keynotes Manager again by using this, or going to the menu. Click on the Attribute Keynotes tab here, and then I'm going to choose the building material attribute, and I'm going to add timber wall, and then I'll just select one of these notes to associate with that. And then I'll go through and let's say choose a composite. I think it was stud 90, and I'll add something to that. And so you can go through and find whatever attributes you might want to link to a keynote. Let's add something to aluminium as well. Obviously, these aren't settings that you would actually want to do, just showing you how this works. So you can go through here and select attributes that you want to do things with and attach as many notes to them as you need. Hit OK once you're done with that. And now, when we select an element that contains something that matches an attribute keynote, you'll see in our label contents that we've got a grayed out item here. So if I select this wall here, you can see we've got 30801 rammed earth showing here, but I don't have a label that's showing that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select that. It shows us where it is in our database. And I'm going to click the little eyeball icon to unhide that note. And you can see as soon as I do that, it automatically places a label attached to that wall containing the note that I have set up as an attribute note. And you can see in the label contents here that it has this little icon of a, what is it? It's like a cube of bricks, I think. I think that represents a building material, I think is what it's saying there. But anytime you see that icon there, it means that it has picked up this particular note because of an attribute keynote rather than a manually placed keynote like these ones are. So you can go through and you can build up, probably in your ArchiCAD template would make the most sense, build up a bunch of attribute keynotes so that all of your elements that you place already know what notes they should have attached to them. So you don't have to go through and manually tag everything. You can just go through, select the wall that you want to show this label on, unhide that, and it'll automatically label it. So it can just make things a lot more streamlined that way. And also if you find elements that have multiple, I don't have anything that uses the aluminium, I don't think. But if you do have things that have multiple attribute keynotes on them, obviously the same as we did here, you can use the hide button to show or hide only some of the notes, which is where that will come in useful. You don't always want to show a label on every single attribute keynote that you have in your project. So that's where that comes in helpful. All right. That's it's been about 25 minutes. Sorry. I'm just going to quickly have a look in the questions and see if anybody had anything come up during that. But if you do have any other questions about keynotes or anything else related to the tools or ArchiCAD, pop those into the chat window now, and I'll answer them if I have time while we're here. Okay, yeah, so someone's commented that they like to use the associative notes, the ArchiCAD labels, that is, associative ArchiCAD labels, to pull custom classifications out of notes, which is definitely another good way of doing that, especially if you are using classifications already. We actually are working on making the Keynotes tool support classifications in a future version, so that you'll be able to do that with Keynotes, but tie it into also other Keynote databases and that sort of thing. But yes, that definitely is a way that you can do a similar sort of thing. Obviously, you won't get the same scheduling and auditing and that sort of thing, but it works its own way around that, so that can be a good way to produce quite a similar thing, yes. Okay, on wall coverings, is there a way to add a batten behind an express joint on a panel? At the moment, no, there is not a way to sort of manually add that. But yeah, I'll catch up with you after this and find out a little bit more. I can imagine that probably Twinmotion is doing what you're saying it is. So it'd be good to find out a little bit more about what we could do to the tool to make it work better in that case, because yeah, I can see that would be a problem. Someone asking, are you able to incorporate or import a NatSpec document into Keynotes? I don't know what the NatSpec lists look like, but you should be able to import basically anything. Pretty much everything on Earth can export a CSV file. So if you can get that as as an Excel doc or something and export that as a CSV, you should be able to match that. Match the fields in that to Keynotes fields using that import dialog that I showed before. The Keynotes tool can link to SmartSpec and MasterSpec if you use either of those, if you're in New Zealand and you use either of those. The way that works is just if you go to your manager when you're about to import your notes, instead, if you use the link option, you can import a MasterSpec or SmartSpec, that is product spec, it's the company is called. You can link specs from either of those two with your online MasterSpec or SmartSpec thing there, and that will let you make changes to them online, and then you can hit update in Keynotes and it'll automatically refresh to match what you've made in MasterKey or SmartSpec. So you can do that, but we don't link to anything else at the moment. We are definitely open to linking to other things. I know that in Australia, I think there's a handful of different online Keynote systems that might be something that customers would be interested in doing. So do let us or your specifier know if that's something that you'd be interested in, and we can sort of talk to each other and see what we could do there. But yeah, for now, that the best way to do that is just by exporting a CSV file and importing that into Keynotes. But yes, if you are in New Zealand and you already use MasterSpec or product spec, If you just contact MasterSpec or ProductSpec and say, hey, I'm keen to use the ArchiCAD plugin for that, they can get you sorted out with how you can do that. They just let us know to sort of activate it on your account, and we can do it pretty much same day. So if you are interested in that, we can get that up and running pretty quick. Yep. Okay. Got a question. Why is your PDF showing with no border, but when you print it, it is showing the border? There's a number of reasons that could be happening. I think I probably need to have a look at your PDF or the project. So I'll get in touch with you after this session runs just to see if I can get a bit more info from you, and we can chase that down. Yep. Because yeah, there's a number of ways that you could be drawing your border and why it could be not showing, that sort of thing. We also have a question. Is there a way of changing the color of the palette tool when changing options on the floor joists or cabinets? The color of the palette, I'm not quite sure what that means. I'll follow up with you about that afterwards. I'm sure we can, if not find a way to do what you're asking, at the very least add a new feature request to the tool to be able to do the thing that you're asking. There's a handful of other things, but we've gone over half an hour now. So I have recorded all of the questions that we have here, so I will go through over the next day or two and get back to you guys who I haven't been able to answer yet, and help with those. And I see that someone's also saying it would be good to have a look at Paramo. So yes, I might do that for a future. It's not really CI tools related, but I might do that for a future webinar as well, because that's definitely quite a powerful and cool little thing built into ArchiCAD now, which will let you make all sorts of weird stuff that you might be thinking of as you go. So yeah, that would be great. If you do have any other ideas for things that you'd like to see, another one that I was thinking of doing at some point would be to look at the Python integration that's in ArchiCAD as well. If there's people interested in that, that might be something we can do as well. But that's all for now today. Thank you very much for attending, and thanks for all the questions. And the recording of this will be available online probably midway through next week up on my CI, so you can just head over there if you want to check up on anything that was in that, or share it with anyone else who you think would be interested. Thanks for your time, everyone.